gun is a tool, Marion. No better, no worse than any other tool. An axe, a shovel, or anything.
Okay, we are here with Tony. It's been a while. Last time we spoke, the whole world changed, obviously, with the pandemic. I'm sure we got a couple questions here in regards to the aftermath of the apocalypse and how compositors are surviving, especially in Germany. But anyway, this is going to be a basic introduction to Tony's latest release, which is the Nuke Survival Toolkit release, and I think he has a new version or something he's going to show us. But you can check it out at compositingmentor.com. If you've been hiding under a rock, this has been the big release. I remember you mentioning it a while back, but you didn't tell me much about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got the PDF, and we're going to switch over to Tony's computer to kind of go over it. If you guys know who Tony Lyons is, again, check out his IMDB at the bottom, his website, and again, we're also going to look at some questions that a few people posted. But let me just kind of leave it to Tony to do the introduction. And do you want to switch over now to
Yeah,
your
sure.
side? Okay.
Let me share my screen. Hello, everybody. I'm Tony Lyons. I wanted to go over this Nuke Survival Toolkit, which there's a video about how to install it and everything. Should be pretty easy, so I'm just going to jump into what it is and how to use it, basically. It's basically a collection of a bunch of tools that I've organized similar to the Nuke menu up here, and the way that Nukepedia is organized. And there's some specific categories, for example, CG, which has to do with normals and position and other things. There's a 3D category, which generally has to do with 3D space. And then you get your basics like filter, keyer, merge, channel, etc. It's definitely a lot to go through. So you can always click this documentation button at the top, and it should bring up a PDF file. If you click that documentation button, you'll come up with this PDF, which lives inside the folder on your network. And you have an index, which you can, of course, click any of these tools here, like Gradient Editor, and it goes over to the tool. Or you can search for the tool if you want. It is a lot of pages. It's like 280 pages or more. But you could go through all of it, but I would say just when you find a tool you want to know more about it, you can just go ahead and find out more.
So did you take the time to kind of copy paste all of the documentation, or did you customize each documentation to better kind of write out what each plugin does?
Good question. A lot of the images that are there were some tools that didn't have an image, and I wanted it to all have an image. So some of the tools I did like examples in my own Nuke, and just to show you, for my own tools, I did some custom like screenshots. A lot of the tools didn't have documentation or had like one line, and I tried to fill it out more of like what everything did. But I mean, most of it probably is copy pasting from Nukepedia or somebody's website, or just linking to the website if it was a giant, write up about it. I didn't want to have anything in there that was not public, so that was pretty much why I made the documentation, because it was helpful to link to things that anybody could download, and for sure all the tools minus mine, because it's mine and it's my toolkit. Like they're already in the toolkit. I probably will upload them at some point, but for now you can get mine. They're the ones with all the TLs next to them, Tony Lyons. So yeah, they're all documented, and the only ones without links, I believe, are Adrian Pueyo's, because there's some unreleased tools from him, and mine. So everything else you can find at some website or some form and download it.
So you either got so basically like Adrian Pueyo is AP, so they're all basically the initials, or basically the name of somebody or their company that made it or something.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of like one-time users that I saw. So I kind of have Nukepedia, NKPD, like just in case I didn't see a recurring pattern. But for example, you've got Ben McEwen's tools, the BM, and he's got some tools in here. DR, Derek Rain, Frank Router, FR. So there's some spin tools. So I tried to, when it made sense, I tried to put it in. Oh, one of my favorite creators, Mark Joey Tang, MJT. I don't know if many people don't know about him, but he's great. He's got some of my favorite tools. He's got all these tool sets in here. These deep to deep to VP suite, and the deep Boolean, for example. And yeah, he's got a lot of great tools.
This is great because we're no longer struggling to install all these. And plus, are all these are all of these plugins basically not every single plugin, but ones that you find are used a lot in the industry, like a must-have?
Yeah, that's right. Because a lot of people ask me like, what's the difference between this and Nuke Bridge? And there's nothing wrong with Nuke Bridge. I personally have never used it, but I think you can easily search for tools, but it's still kind of an overwhelming amount of tools. And these are the ones that I think are really useful, even if you don't use all of them all the time. Like it can come in handy, but they're definitely, all of them have a use. And I mean, I had way more than this because, as every compositor knows, they kind of just collect them, and you kind of have a bucket full of tools, and then you never look at them for like 10 years, and then it's like, so you just have tons of tools. So I actually went through and sifted through them and deleted the ones that I thought weren't any good, or that I was like, I don't use this ever, or if there was two duplicates that did pretty much the same thing and there wasn't a benefit to one or the other, I just deleted that one. And I just came down with this more and more refined list of tools that I think is pretty much I'm sure there's some that some people would prefer a different tool than the one that I have in here, or they have a better one or whatever. But I'm pretty sure these ones are pretty useful, and I do use a lot of them quite a lot in regular production. These are production tested, most of them. There's some that, of course, like this some of these 3D ones that I haven't, but they have great videos explaining how to use them and stuff, and they look pretty essential. And then there's also some that are kind of like I guess learning friendly. Like there's a whole thing from my friend Andrea Garamania, or Garamia. I'm sorry, Andrea Garamia. Let's edit that out. So it's always hard to pronounce, but he's got these like expression nodes, so you can kind of go through, and if you're trying to learn about Nuke expressions, for example, you can see different types of like expressions, which is pretty cool, I thought. He's also got a really handy one down in, I think it's utilities, which is Python and TCL AG. It's Andrea Garamia. And you can see he's got all this documentation. He's got a full website right up too, but sometimes when you're looking for something really quick, you can just find it here with all this kind of stuff. And look, he's got drop downs and it replaces all this stuff. I mean, I figure it's like, it's just a encyclopedia of tools, expressions, and stuff. It's kind of amazing stuff. And even if you never use it, like you know that it's there and you have it. So
I think this should be, I mean, obviously you've got enough experience. I could probably trust that this is probably the bee's knees in regards to the tool sets that are commonly used in production. I could definitely see this being something that every post house would kind of throw into the mix, because I remember working at Filmworkers, we were rushing at the beginning to get all the plugins installed.
Mm-hmm.
You got that plugin? Yeah, I got that plugin. You know what I mean? At the very least, you have this to start with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that would be pretty cool.
I want to make it, I don't know how technical, I guess this is tool time, but I tried to make this as safe as I could, this menu, and there's some problems in Nuke where if Nuke finds two gizmos with the same name, it doesn't really like that, and it can actually crash Nuke. It doesn't know it. Basically, a gizmo file is trying to point to a location on the server. So if you have two that are named the same, it doesn't know which one to get. So it'll kind of like freak out and it'll crash Nuke. So every tool in here has a custom prefix, which is called NST, a Nuke Survival Toolkit. So theoretically, if you don't have more than one Nuke Survival Toolkit installed, there is no tool that should conflict with another studio's tool. So even if you had this installed like in your user folder in a company, as long as that company didn't have the tool installed, and if they did have it installed, as long as if it was the same, it shouldn't be a problem, I don't think. And one other thing to note is that none of these are actual gizmos. These are all groups. So all of these are groups. So they come in as groups. But it's a sort of a trick. It's a hack because they're all saved as gizmo files. but they come into Nuke as groups. So when they're in this list, the reason why you can see like all these things and it's all nice is that they're reading like Gizmo files, which has a couple benefits. One of the benefits is that when you first bring the tool in and you click Control, if I can click it, if you click Control, it'll bring it back to the default value once you make it. If that makes any sense. So with a regular group node, I don't know if I have one in here that I could see. Let's see, like this, for example. So this is a group, and so if I click Control, I don't know if you can see that, it's defaulting to 0 because it doesn't know what the defaults are.
Oh, that's cool.
So a gizmo keeps the defaults. Now, there's a caveat, because it's not actually a gizmo, it's a group. So a Nuke does this funny thing, I'm not sure if it's a bug or if it's a feature, where Nuke remembers the defaults within that session, but if I were to close Nuke and I were to open this back up, it would forget the defaults again. So it's beneficial when you make the tool, but not if you were to like open the tool back up, because it's a group and it'll never remember what the defaults of the group were. So it's sort of a bug that we're taking advantage of, but at the end of the day, like if you were to open the script again and try to default stuff, and you couldn't do it. But I figure it's better to try to default it. So it's one of the benefits. Also, when you make, I'll try to do this again. When you make a tool, let's see if I can do one. See here, it made a group, and nothing showed up in the settings, right? So I will bring the same tool up with, and this is one of the differences between having a menu item that's a gizmo and having one that's a tool set. And so I'll bring one in from filter, the same exact one actually, directional blur, and you see it made it and it popped up with the settings. That's another advantage of having a gizmo. So it pops up with the settings and it remembers the defaults, which I figure are two pretty nice things to have, because that's what you would expect a tool to do.
Now you also have, I noticed at the bottom there's like templates as well.
Yes. I included my keying template, and there's a stamps update. If anybody uses stamps, I highly recommend using this one, but you don't have to. There's the other one that's kind of the older version. But yeah, this is just the keying template that it's slightly updated. I do a few different things. I'm using different tools in here, like the Expand Blur Simple. I don't think I have anything in here, but I could show you actually. If you just make a roto shape, for example. Now this is very similar to what used to be Luma Pictures Expand Blur, which some people have used before, but I kind of made my own, which is set up by default kind of the same way, but you have, so when you go positive, it goes out, and you have these steps, so they're iterations. So what this is doing is making more and more blurs, like, so it's like iterating how many blurs you have. And when you go negative, it kind of does the opposite, and it inverts the image and blurs inwards. So you can, this is really nice for if you need like a real soft roto, and you get the multiply here. So you kind of get these two settings, size and multiply, and a post blur here. So anyways, that's I think I used to use the node called Feather, which used to be in here, but I've kind of replaced it with this Expand Blur Simple. And just the basics, like there's a blacks match in there that it's one of your favorite tools.
So you got this is basically the updated version with your blacks match tool.
Yes,
which would be the most robust workflow.
There's some things you learn after a few years, and you kind of adjust your workflow. There's also an additive keyer that is a custom additive keyer that I've made. One of the ones that I really like is called Highlight Suppress, and this, you always get the note like this thing looks too bright, or if you have an explosion or something, it looks too bright. And with Highlight Suppress, it kind of does like a toe but reversed, and it's got a equation in there. I didn't actually make it. It came from this guy Irohara, which used to be called Lazy Tone Map, which I love that name, Lazy Tone Map, but I renamed it Highlight Suppress because I think it made more sense, like what it did. So as you can see here, it's kind of like bringing those values down into an acceptable range and keeping the nice color information. So if you had an explosion, for example, this would help not super white the values and bring everything down into a visible range. And you can increase this limit affected area, and that'll just make sure that it's affecting just the highlights. So it kind of like bleeds into the midtones, but you can make it just affect highlights there. I think this is such a useful tool, and just for everyone's knowledge, the higher you go, the more that it's trying to suppress the highlights, and the back to 1 is back to normal. So when it's 1, it's normal, and then as you go higher, it's kind of like a slider, and it's got a mix as well. And along the same lines as that is the white soft clip, which is one of mine. And so sometimes you don't want to reduce the highlights, but sometimes you have these super crazy values. Like if you start multiplying explosions in this and that, you'll get these values that are like 100, or sometimes you have a CG that has like a 300 pixel value thing, right? And you want to clamp it. You want to clamp that value and make sure it doesn't go over a certain amount, but you don't want it to look any different. So you want it to be visually looking the same, but you want it to be in an acceptable range, right? So here I have, let's see, what are these values? They're going up to like 3 about, right? So I could put this down to, let's say 1.2 is an acceptable amount. So this is trying to keep it into an acceptable range. I'm going to go to 1.5 because if you go... This is really handy for things that are really high, like values that are 50, and you're trying to make them down to like 10 or something. Because an Alexa plate, for example, has a range of about like 14 or 16. Like that's from 0 to 14, and that's the range. So I think that's actually the default value here, is 16. So that's trying to bring things in. So sometimes you'll have CG that's just crazy bright, and it's gonna help you bring that back down and then remain. Let's see if I can. Here we go. This is a good example here. So here the value is 8 or 7.2, and I'm bringing it down to 2. So now the value is 1.7, but visually it looks the same. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's different from the highlight suppress, because the highlight suppress is visually, making it look like not so bright, I guess. So
these are always little subtleties you only pick up with years of production, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Well, this is really handy because, like, imagine they say, "Oh, we can't let the value go over 50, but it has to look exactly the same." So then, how do you? Because then you need to. Because if I lower the exposure, you can see that. So if I let's say I clamped it at 2. There's a white soft clip in Nuke as well, but I'll show you the difference. So this maximum at 2. So that's a clamp, right? But this is the difference. So this is all at 2, and this is sort of it's proportionally keeping the color difference between the channels. So it's like the highest one will be the number, and then the ratio between the red and blue channel, or the red, green, and blue channel will stay the same. So it's trying to keep the colors. And there is a white soft clip in Nuke. Where is it? Or is it just soft clip, I think?
Yeah, I think it's soft.
It's just soft clip. So if I were to, I don't know what the min is, but if I were to do this, is that right? Don't even know how to use it.
Doesn't work at all.
How do you use this? Let's cut this out too. I'm pretty sure you put it at 2, right? That's what I would imagine. Yeah, I think that's right. So the soft clip is also going to look a lot like a clamp, whereas whereas this thing is going, and I'll bring it back. So soft clip visually, it's looking pretty good visually, and it did the job. But once you expose down, you can see. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
But it's all just muddy and clamped, which it's a little bit better than a clamp maybe. But this is the reason I built the tools, because you can kind of okay. Imagine using the black match tool, and that's the lowest value that your CG will go to. Is this black color?
0, yeah.
Yeah. So if you have a black match and then you also have a white soft clip, so then you're setting kind of a range. So you'll know it'll never be over this max value. So you can be confident that you're not going to have any crazy values later. Say if you did like an exponential blur or something, like a glow, which, speaking of that, another awesome tool is called AP Glow, and it's one of Adrian's tools, Adrian Puello. And let's see if I can get this to work. So it does this really nice glow on everything, which has a tolerance, I think. Yeah, there you go. So you can really glow out these like highlights you see. But if I had like a super crazy white values that were, let's see if I can do this quickly. My Nuke is freezing. That's okay. So let's say this were a value of like 10, right? So visually, I mean, it looks pretty bad, but let's say that's what it was. When you exponentially glow it, it's gonna go insane, right? It's gonna be super bright. But then if you white soft clip it, should be, let's bring it down to 4 or something.
There you go.
So a lot of times what you'll see is there'll be like one frame of CG that'll catch some crazy highlight, and it'll be like value of 100, and then you'll have an exponential glow that just goes boom, and then it explodes. And that's a very common thing because you don't often check the CG, but this could be a way to solve that situation of just like, okay, let's put all the values to 10, and so we don't have any surprises when we're rendering it.
So you guys have to deal with so much involved with going from values from 1 to like 30, right? That you have to keep in mind. This isn't just like...
No. This is because these are CG values. These are just, they can be whatever. I mean, you'll have CG values that are reflecting the sun and the CG sun or whatever, and it's, I mean, I've gotten values of 1,000 before. And then if you take the CG and you blur it and then you multiply it with something in the background, now suddenly you got like a value of 50 multiplied by a value of 10, then you have a value of 500, and it's, I mean, it can get kind of wild depending on what you're doing, but okay, let's move on to some other stuff if you want. I really recommend the chromatic from Spin Effects. It's pretty cool. It's pretty light. It's Blink script, so it's pretty light. Maybe I can show you on a different... I could show you on a CG pass, actually. So I've got this helicopter here, or actually in this case, let me just show you on a checkerboard so it doesn't try to freak out. Now, Eron Leroy has a great video on this already, so I'm not going to do it any justice right now, but it's a great...
well, you've already given us a great gift here, and that is a roadmap to what the pros use, because there's so many plugins on Nukepedia. You could be working on a plugin that might be obsolete or not even working correctly, but instead you've given a sort of a primer here as far as what you should know and study up on, and use the documentations by or whatever. So thanks for that.
No problem. Yeah, and I've tried to keep all of them up to date. Like they should be the latest of everything, I believe, and I'm constantly updating it as well. So
when you do an update, it's also an update of the newest version, or at least you're going to try to in your busy schedule for all of these plugins, basically. If there is a new update, okay.
If I see new updates coming through, or if somebody messaged me saying that's not the latest one, then I'll try to update it. And then once I gather a bunch, or once maybe a month goes by or something, I'll try to make like a big release that people can download the new one. And I'm working on creating an update document, which is basically what I updated from the last release. So then it'll have like the new tools and the things that were broken that I fixed and etc. So yeah, this is great. Chromatic aberration tool. Geez, what else? There's a lot of vector tools in here, but that's boring. This one's kind of cool. I'm gonna promote this one, not this one here, but the iMorph tool. Where was it? I just saw it. So how do I explain this one?
I think I played with this last night. It's A/B and a mask, and it kind of morphs the two together, so it could technically help a morph between two different shots.
Yeah, this is gonna be the most hacky version of this, but let's try it. So I have this woman's face, Let me get rid of this for
You're
a
doing
second.
exactly what I did. I took a transform, and I was like,
This
okay.
is, it's, yeah, I forget when we,
I just transformed the head of the person down a little bit. I was using video of my nephew, and I was like, okay, let's just see what
yeah.
this does. And
It's pretty crazy. We actually, thanks to Adrian, because I kind of thought of this idea and he made it into reality, which is awesome. And he's actually working on turning it into Blink script because it is quite slow, and it comes from Morph Dissolve, which is another one I want to shout out. Morph Dissolve it basically does a chronos of two different images, and I'm not sure if I have a good example of. Yeah, I don't have a lot of moving footage, I think, unfortunately, but it does a chronos between two images. So 50% is a 50% chronos, and 100% is one image, is image one, and 0 is image 0. And so it's really handy for trying to blend like paint patches. So when you track a patch on, you can basically like dissolve it out. But of course, with the regular dissolve, you see it's two images that are just dissolving, and with a morph dissolve, it like blends out. It's really cool. Maybe I can show it with just this, but let's see if I can do it. Plug these in here. So if I move this over a little bit, and if I morph dissolve between them,
yeah, that's what I did. I just did a quick. It kind of gives you the idea,
it'll give you the idea, I hope, or else it'll explode. We'll find out in a second. It is very heavy, which is why we're trying to kind of recreate it.
That's what I noticed. I was like, wow, this is pretty heavy as far as like the but it worked. I mean, I was shocked to see the quality, the accuracy of the vector interpolation,
Yeah. I think I just crashed my nuke. But there's a ton of, all the CG. Oh no, it's working. It is working. It's just taking its precious time. This is why I need a new MacBook Pro. If anybody
you should start a
knows,
GoFundMe.
No, I got. Actually, I don't like the new lineup. I'm waiting for them to change the actual system,
Don't you want the cheese grater?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't do enough to justify any of that.
No.
So here we have one image and then another image transformed, and this is the result, basically 50%. So it's an entirely new image. It's kind of a bad example probably because it knows exactly where it is. But if you were trying to, obviously, if I were to dissolve it, so you'd get this image, but instead we get this nice. It's just Chronos basically. It's an iDistort, or you can do the Chronos option, which is probably going to take just as long. But yeah, it's an amazing way to blend a patch off. So if you're doing prep work, this is your best friend, because a lot of prep work is just making a still frame and then tracking it while something, one object crosses over something, and then dissolving between like two still frames. And this will Chronos morph between the two still frames that you have like tracked in there. It's absolutely amazing. So that's the results. One that we use a lot at Trixter, and I know a lot of people are big fans of this tool, but some people don't know about it, and is called the Card to Track, which is from actually my comp supervisor, Alexei Kaczynski. So it's really cool. So let me try to demonstrate here, and I'll delete I'll delete some of these at the moment, and I'll make a new one. So we have this, I think everybody's probably seen this before, it's some dolly shot, some basic one, and we have a camera. So I just quickly tracked this shot before this thing. So Card to Track, it's a really great tool. So basically what it's trying to do is trying to find the location of a point in 3D space, and then it makes a card and then exports a bunch of nice nodes that you can use afterwards. And all you really need is the undistorted tracking plate and the camera. And that's all you need. So this will be provided with you if you have a CG department, or if you have done the shot or whatever yourself. So it's pretty easy. For example, let's say I wanted this back wall, this area here. You put the picker there. So it's got nice steps here. You place the picker where you want the center of the card, and you click set. So that sets it. And what this is doing is it's creating a card in 3D space from the camera. So it's pushing the card back in Z. And so what you do next is you're trying to find where the card exists in Z. And so we go to a different frame and we adjust this thing. This is working. It's just my computer is being really slow right now. So what I've done is I've gone to a different frame than when I picked it, and I've adjusted this little slider here, Z. So now you can see this little point is sticking. See as I move it, and all I've done is set the point and then find the Z. So basically, I have a camera move, and there's a card in 3D space, and I've adjusted the Z to find out. Okay, now it appears like it's sticking the entire time. You see the corner?
Mm-hmm.
So what I do now is I click this button, happy, so good, and then what we can do is we can set the scale of the card like this, and this part doesn't really matter, but you want it to be within the frame. Well, not within the frame, but not gigantic, basically. And we're just gonna kind of set the perspective by rotating it a little bit. And there's great videos. I recommend going to Alexei's YouTube and checking this out because he's got one much better example than this. But so see, now we're flush with the wall. You can see the perspective looks pretty good. So when we move around, it looks like it's stuck, right? Then you click this button here, go. Once you're happy with where the card is living, and you've checked a few frames and it looks good, and you click go. You might label it back wall, and it will quickly generate for you. If it's quick. It's just my computer being slow because we're recording, I think.
Yeah, that's fine.
Here we go. So you got these really cool nodes here. So you have a card where that was in 3D space that you can check out. So that's where the card was. If we look at a scene in the camera, for example. So that's where it was. And then you have these awesome corner pins, which if we see there, that's where that card was, you see? And it's all baked out, which means that it's really, really fast. So it doesn't have to go through a 3D system anymore. And so by default, it's set to stabilize here, and here we go, so it's stabilized. So if I were to scrub this, you can see that the plate is now stabilized to that wall, you see?
Mm-hmm.
So now it's like a corner pin that's stabilized to that wall, and that works with any perspective. So if it was a different angle that wasn't on the camera, it would be stuck to that, to like the side wall, for example, or the floor, and it's just a pretty handy thing to have. So now it's a 2D transformation versus a 3D system, and it's
what would be the long way of doing this without this tool?
Well, you could like put a card there and project something on the card, right? And then just freeze the camera. And this is kind of just saving the hassle, and it's doing it in 2D, right? Also, you can now take this, it comes with this Roto here. This is a Roto Node. And this has the tracking information baked into the matrix transform, so the transform of the root. And what does that mean? So on any frame now, you can make a quick roto shape. Let's go to the beginning. So let's roto this door because it's on this plane. So you can do this, for example. And that's it. And now the door frame is rotoed. I'll use another one called Rotoqc. So we can just put this over the plate. And it might be a little different because of the lens distortion, but I don't want to calculate it right now. So now we have, all I did was make one shape, and now it's tracked in. See? Because it's using the root. It's using the root transform data, which is coming from that corner pin. So this is a great way to do some rotos if you have some stationary objects or something and you have a nice camera track. So I just made a roto on one frame, and it's using the transformation data from this card to track. And And we use it a lot at Trixter. It's really speedy for that stuff. It takes a little bit to get used to, like how to use it, but once you've kind of like solved it and you're like, oh, you understand what it's doing, because it's taking just a 4-point track and it's making, so you get all the perspective and everything. So it's really, really cool. We use it all the time at Trixter. It's really good. And thank you to Alexei and Helge Sang for making this awesome tool. So that's another one that I would say is underrated and like really people should be using. It's just like really, really good. And then there's all the CG ones like AP Matte that I know. I think Adrian maybe went over that with you.
Maybe.
There's one.
I honestly think I'm going to do a series on this, and then I'll probably contact you or Adrian and be like, hey, and maybe have you come on maybe for 5 minutes if you're willing, and being like, hey, layman's terms, what is this? What do you use it for in practical situations? Because a lot of these tools they're really cool, but they have some of them have very unique circumstances where you would need the tool. Like you were mentioning about the highlights, on a CG object.
Yeah.
So some people will be like, so it's always hard to find a project that you can present in a tutorial form that demonstrates the use of some of these things, unless you're knee-deep in heavy production working on major motion pictures,
Yeah, totally. Let me try to grab something. This is a really cool one coming from the CG menu. So it's called End Reflection. There's also one called Environment Reflect, BB. But this is really cool. So you plug in your normals here. So this is your normals. And you plug in your environment map, which is this lat long image, and it's just magic, basically. It's because it's going to, if it calculates, it's going to reflect based off the normals where the environment is, which is super cool.
So
and
it's
maybe
putting that into like a spherical setup, and then taking the normal information and giving you the reflections and so forth.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I could scale the resolution here, so that's maybe a little faster. I hope I can do that at least.
So scale resolution 1.0 would be the resolution of the original CG object?
It's scaling the environment map down so that it doesn't have to calculate so much. But you see this? It's like so it's reflecting this
cool.
environment. Yeah, it's super nice. And my computer right now is just doesn't like me. So I'm sure if I scaled it up to the maximum, you'd see all the detail of the environment. But the other one is let's see if it's a little bit sharper now. So if you were to blur the environment, you kind of get this image-based lighting map, so it's all like nice colors. And then this would be like more like if you wanted a reflection from a window or something, because you can see the image that's on the side there.
Yeah.
So I mean some of this stuff is just voodoo magic for me. I just love it. Yeah. Is there anything else?
I think that would be it. I think we could probably jump over to the Q&A, and I think I'll start kind of like rummaging through this and maybe start, at the top of the list and move down or something.
One more, Matt. One
Sure.
more. This normals rotate, which is also there. Normals rotate, since we're on the topic of normals, this one is amazing too, because you just pick the normals, so you control alt pick, and it's finding the angle based off the normals selection.
Oh, okay,
you see what I mean? And
now,
so you
what
can
would you
rotate
use that for practically? For like a lighting pass or something, or
relighting? Yeah,
relighting.
Any type of relighting. Yeah. Say the director says, "Oh, actually, we'd like it to be a little bit more lit from the side or something," and you're like, "Okay, no problem." So you create this one, and then you create a grade node. Say there was. Imagine there was a red flashing light on the side, right? So then you can just create a red light on the side and make it bright or something.
Okay.
Well, like there you go. So there was some sort of light there, and you can just find the angle, and again you just control pick, so you can see like, imagine there was like some runway lights or something. I mean, this is what you do with CG. You're just constantly. I would love to do a CG lesson. I just don't have any good renders that I can use. But yeah, basically the whole thing is generating mattes. So generating these mattes and then color correcting and finding the different materials and stuff. But this is some magic. And also, you can say I pick this one. You have these horizontal and vertical rotation sliders. So just like imagine a sphere and it's rotating the angle. So you can see it's just rotating along there, and then you can rotate vertically too. So like it covers like all the angles. So first you pick, and then you're sliding it around, and it's kind of moving the calculation around the object. It's super cool.
All right, so I got some questions here. Okay, this is from Natanya Music. Slashing that apart. Here's my question for Tony. Technology is like Unreal Engine with a lot of built-in auto-compositing features or real-time in-camera VFX. Using LED screens, Mandalorian, are breathing very close to the compositing task. How do you feel about it? How do you think this will change the philosophy of new compositing for the next couple of years? Will compositing as we know it totally disappear? Thanks both in advance. Best, Miguel.
Well, I think he's talking about two separate things. He's talking about Unreal Engine, which I guess he's talking about the pre-production for The Mandalorian, I suppose, on the virtual set. I think that'll actually just shift the compositing in the beginning of the phase, because you need the environments to look amazing, and you're going to need a compositor to make everything look realistic before you film it. So, if anything, that'll just create compositing jobs in the beginning of the pipeline. Which is pretty cool, because then you're part of the previs and part of that sort of stuff. Will compositing go away? Compositing will never go away. There's always compositing jobs. If anything, our life just gets a little easier, and we can do cool things faster. So the LED screens are really cool. Actually, that's what Adrian Poeo is currently kind of working on at Orca Studios over in the Canary Islands. And I mean, it just looks amazing, that stuff.
Well, let me ask you this. From what I'm hearing, these LED screens have seams, and they get moire. So you're not really recording the background image. You're just using that to light the actor. Then you're physically rotoing the character every frame to light the actual, or to put the Unreal Engine that was recorded behind that. Like you're not actually physically recording an LED screen and having that as your final print.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. You can. Yeah. I've seen it. Adrian just sent me a video. It's amazing.
Okay, because I've heard there's seams, and maybe a compositor removes those seams, but I've been hearing it's been like, because of the need, there's still obviously to roto everything so that you can color correct everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be situations where it doesn't look good, or situations where the director wants the background to change. I mean, just because it's filmed in camera doesn't mean you can't roto the guy and put another background in there. So there's going to be a lot more roto work, that's for sure. And there's also one of the cool things, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say, but one of the cool things that's a possibility is that you have the environment reflecting lights outside. Say you have like a 360 set. You have some of the environments reflecting light and some of the environment looking like a green screen or something. So then you have like the benefit of reflections while still having some sort of green screen, which is pretty cool. So I mean, there's lots of opportunity. I think anytime a new technology comes down, like machine learning or like these things, it's just a newer opportunity to do better stuff. I think like it's not going to slow us down. I mean, if you look at 20 years ago compared to today, I mean, you could say that technology is 10 times better than 20 years ago, but there's not fewer compositing jobs. There's much, much, much more compositing jobs, and everything got better, you know? So if things get better, there's just going to be more opportunity for more people to get into it and do different types of compositing. It might shift, like maybe we'll do less keys, which is always good. But maybe we'll do more CG renders. Maybe they'll focus more on, effects explosions and stuff. So
there's just so much to tweak on a frame, not to mention just one frame, but many moving frames, that this idea that the foundry is just going to be out of business in regards to nuke sales,
Yeah.
It's just going to we're all using the Unreal Engine now. Thank you, Nuke, No, because there's so much tweaking and that it just seems like you're talking a minimum 30 years before you even come close to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't know what
yeah,
the
for
future
sure.
holds, but you know. But okay, so we got Floopy Broccoli. How has being a compositor changed over the years with the barrier of entry of being so low? A barrier for entry of being so low.
It's an interesting
I
question. Does he mean that it's easier to get a job, or
I don't
is that what
know.
that means?
I would assume it's high from what you guys are telling me.
If that user means that the barrier entry is so low, as in more people are jumping in, I mean that's good. That's a good sign, I think, right? Because then more people are doing compositing. There's more opportunity to learn things and to discover things. So I don't see how that's a bad thing. If he means the opposite of it's so difficult to get a job, I think that is a problem. Because there used to be a pretty clear like Roto Paint or tracking department, and then you slowly become a junior comp, and then with the outsourcing to these different places, um, then maybe it's more difficult to go up in the chain or something like that, because then you need to just jump into being a junior compositor. So I think the things that you need to know starting out have definitely changed, but no, I think the opportunities are still there and still available to people.
Manoj Manoharan, Madlook VFX. How do you stay updated on finding time for day-to-day learning? Please share something with us about your routine.
I stay up really late at night.
Yeah, because you emailed me like 2 in the morning or something. I was like, he's still up?
Yeah,
And you
yeah, I
just,
don't get a lot of sleep,
wow. You know, I,
but
I, I love
I
that
don't know what other
video. I
people are
love
like.
that video of yours where you show the 1 year of your life. If you guys, I'll link it at the bottom.
Oh, you don't
It
do
really, I just something about that video, man. I think you should do another one. I think you should do one every
that.
because
I
it's
would have
really
loved to.
cool.
Thank you.
You
I
guys
would have
do a
loved to
lot
do
of
that. That
really
was,
well. You guys eat at a lot of really nice restaurants. You drink a lot of beer, from what I'm telling, from what I can
yeah.
tell.
Oh, maybe.
And you try to
Especially.
do a lot of activity even during the weekdays. Am I wrong about that, or?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And when I watch something like that, I see. Oh, there's so many days where I wasn't doing anything because I was doing like overtime and stuff. Um, but I think it's just finding a balance for yourself, right? It's like you're balancing, relationships and working out or eating healthy and entertainment and then learning, like Mad Lux has just said. So it's just sliders of your life, right? It's like, oh, like I'm gonna slide this one down so that I can learn more, or I need to hang out with my friends more, so I'm going to, stop exercising for a little bit, or it's you can't do everything at once. Or I want to go traveling, but if you're traveling, you're not learning, your skill set. So I think a lot of people like to find work-life balance day to day. I think I like to try to find work-life balance in chunks. So I don't mind doing like a lot of overtime if and then I get like a week of just not looking at a computer and going off in the middle of nowhere. So that's how I like to operate and convert weeks to months. So like maybe I'll do 2 months of intensive learning or intensive like side project, and then I'll do 2 months of a crazy um, health and exercise or something like that. So it's always shifting, and it's kind of like once you get bored of it, or once it's like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore, then you just shift into the next thing that you want to do, and you kind of just go back and forth, because eventually you're gonna get bored with the routine. At least I do. So
The I think the one question we haven't asked yet is the big C. Since you have so much connection to so many people in the industry and you kind of know the heartbeat of it, how has this whole pandemic affected the industry? Has it affected at all, or is everything back to normal again? Or
it's a good question. It's definitely affected the industry. There's a lot of people that are probably out of jobs right now, unfortunately. But at the same time, there's probably a lot of opportunities to people who didn't have them originally, because if everyone's logging in, it's certainly made logging in and working from home a big part of working. Many offices are not even like people are not even in the office right now. But that opens up, in my opinion, this is totally speculation, but in my opinion, that opens up a lot of doors, which is, why would you live in New York City and pay Manhattan wages when you could live in, Tennessee or something and then log in remotely. And you don't have to, use those extreme examples, but like even if you're in a city within your own country or state or whatever, like you don't have to live in the middle of, 30-minute commute to work. You could live 2 hours outside of work. So I think and this is not just for our industry, it's for a lot of industries. So I think it's opening the ways people, and then you can get a job much farther away. So suddenly whereas you would have to go into the office around, say, Chicago or something, maybe you could log into Los Angeles and maybe they'd let you work at like, these companies in Los Angeles. So it's really like opening a lot of these interesting doors that weren't available before. So in one hand, it's really bad because studios are going out of business. They're not finding work. They're competing heavily. And the other side is there's so much opportunity that is cross-blending now. So it's kind of these two strange forces that we don't know which one's going to be coming out on top. But it's a moment for opportunity for sure if people are looking for it.
So are you guys are working from home right now, or are you?
The majority of my office is working from home. Yeah. Myself and Ernest are still going to the office because we have small setups. I have this MacBook Pro and it's not a great setup. So as you guys can see, so I still am able to go into the office right now safely. So and it's not very big. There's not that many people there. Um, but obviously follow whatever regulations your country or state is giving you. Um,
This is my first semester at Purdue, but I asked people, I go, why are the hallways so dead around here? We have, and he's like, well, we have half online and half in on ground, but this place is usually bustling. The hallways are usually bustling, but it's like a ghost town there in the
yeah.
hallways of the what is the Kanoi Technology Building, which is where I'm at. Um, but it definitely feels like I talk to people that go to work at other jobs, and they're like, it feels kind of depressing because no one's around.
I think that's one part of it. I think at first it was definitely a hard thing to transition into. Like then you don't see anybody anymore. But I think I mean, man, it's so funny what human beings get used to so fast. But like now I'm logging in. For example, Trixter has a Berlin office and a Munich office, and sometimes we're communicating with people in Berlin. And before we had these like rudimentary like phones that you like call with the wire and everything, and it was like hardwired. And now we're all using like Google and stuff to Google Meet and stuff to get personal accounts and everything. But suddenly like the people that you maybe wouldn't have seen before, you're suddenly in a meeting with them, and everyone's on the same playing field. So somebody in Vancouver is communicating with somebody in Montreal, and they're all using the same. There's no difference between your colleague that's next door and the one that's in Montreal because you're just communicating with Zoom or Google or whatever you're using. So suddenly, I think in one way it brings people farther apart because you don't see them day to day. But in another way, it's strange that it brings people closer because you're doing all these like meetings like we're doing now and stuff. It's a bit strange. It's kind of like it's like a back and forth. Like I suddenly get closer to people that maybe I wouldn't have expected because I communicate with them and I'm seeing their face, whereas before it would just be on the phone, for example.
Yeah, there is some. I mean, it is a horrific virus, and it is what it is. But I mean, there is some silver linings I'm starting to see out of this as well. As odd as that sounds.
Yeah, the benefits we will take those into the future. All the benefits will go with us. Like the industry has changed, and it's probably not going to be easy to put the genie back in the bottle. To say, oh no, we can't work from home anymore. I think it's going to be quite difficult to say that, I'm sure, but we'll see what happens.
Yep. Last question, Roni Day. Thanks, sir, for having these available links for Nuke workflow and compositing works that's much needed. Hi, sir. Myself, Roni, a VFX student from India. So somebody just
Nice.
saying thanks, I guess. And that's the thing, folks. And I recommend we follow Tony's example here as far as like helping. I think there's probably a ton of people out there that I don't know if they're just too busy or whatever, but it's very rare to find somebody in the compositing industry that helps people out. Even for you, I won't say which studio you were trying to help me go to a studio, and there was an opening, and you're like, hey, I know somebody there, and we'll see what happens. And sure enough, COVID came along and canceled that whole thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was the thought that counts. That you didn't, you got a busy life, and you're over here looking out for other people, and you've definitely are looking out for a whole generation here of people that are wondering what are the, and I've always been asked this on so many interviews, like what are the tools you guys are using? What is the group of tools that you guys have a core that you have on the side? Because whenever you work at a studio, they have all these tools there, and you're like, okay, and to have some form of a primer or just a starting pack that kind of says, hey, this is what we use day in and day out for all types of situations is awesome, and I'm sure it's going to be beneficial for the entire industry. With that said, but
Yeah, I hope so.
do you have anything to say before we take off here, sir? I don't want to hold you any
Just
longer.
just that this is it's a tool set that I created and that I compiled, so it's going to be biased to the things that I like, of course. I plan to do some courses or some like a series about how to make a menu yourself and how to like adjust it and stuff. I don't know if people would be interested in that, but it's definitely a lot easier than you would say, but it takes it's like a hurdle to get over. But I think so. I would like to see people making their own stuff and collecting their own tools and adding to it and stuff. And this is obviously mine, but I hope this project like grows into a more community thing where people are kind of checking like these checks and balances and like, oh, that's an update there, and there's a new tool that is really cool, and like I would love to see it grow into a bigger thing. So, but yeah, it's definitely a starter pack, and it's gonna grow from there. So.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on, and we'll have all the posts at the bottom. And I guess we'll check you later, sir.
Thanks a lot, man. See you later.